Now to our other top story of the day, and right now relatives of the victims killed 10 years ago today are at Ground Zero in New York to mark the somber anniversary. On September 11th, 2001, nearly 3,000 people were killed in those attacks, most of them in New York. And that's where we find our own Chris Gailus, who has been in New York this week covering the anniversary. We've been hearing the names read out as we do every year during the anniversary, Chris, but this year it takes on a special meaning, it being 10 years, of course.
Yeah, it sure does. An important milestone for the folks here in New York City and around the world. Anybody who lost a loved one on that day 10 years ago, it's been a poignant ceremony. It's been a beautiful ceremony. There have been some incredible performances by James Taylor, Paul Simon, singing Sounds of Silence. It was really something special to see the way people are embracing this brand new National 9/11 Memorial, and they're using it in exactly the way right now that the designer and the architect, Michael Arad, had hoped they would. They're spread out on the grass. They're looking at their loved ones' names etched into bronze along the parapet that rings the waterfall. And it's a place of contemplation. It's a place of thoughtfulness. And it's really of stunning, impactful beauty just because of the sheer size of the memorial. The waterfalls are 30 feet tall. The bronze parapet around that with all of the names arranged in a way that links them together, either due to proximity, where they were when they died, when the towers fell, friends next to friends, and co-workers next to co-workers, and it really is sort of an interesting way to memorialize the names in bronze there.
Chris,
we've talked about it throughout the morning about how New York firefighters took a big hit, more than any other first responder here. They lost 343 men that day. They've lost 55 men and women since then due to 9/11 related illnesses, and nobody has taken a hit like they have. I'm going to bring in a guest right now who is now a retired firefighter but was at work that day. Louis Caccioli joins me now. It's nice to have you with us. Thanks very much for being here on this special day.
Thank you for having me.
Tell me a little bit about how you feel with the memorial opening tomorrow to the public. I know it's been difficult for you guys because you weren't invited to take part in anything on the 10th anniversary down there today, but when you look at the memorial and consider the 10th anniversary, how are you feeling?
I tell you, to be honest with you, when I look at it, it makes me feel good. You know, it was well done, well designed, and you know what, I think, I just hope that the family that lost their loved ones are happy about it. But I am a little hurt that I wasn't invited to go there today, but that's okay. You know what? I'll come one day this week, and I would like to see it up close and pay my respect.
Talk to us about that day 10 years ago. I know you came very close to losing your life, as a lot of guys did, but maybe nobody closer than you did. Talk to us about what happened on that day and where you were when you finally got out of there.
That day, Chris, probably the luckiest. It was a terrible day. It changed the whole world. But for me, it was, you know, I'm still thinking, deciding today, well, what am I doing here? You know, I should have been dead. I lost 10 of my colleagues. I was trapped in an elevator in the North Tower on the 24th floor. Tower 2 was going down, knocked out the power. We forced the elevator. Myself and Tommy Hetzel, I worked my way out. I lost him going down the stairs. I made it out to the West Side Highway, and then the North Tower started coming down, and I get buried, and they found me right away, and I'm here.
You wear a bracelet with Tommy Hetzel's name on it. Why memorialize him every day like that?
I never leave my house without this bracelet.
Let's show it to folks here. You got it there.
Tommy Hetzel's great firefighter of Ladder 13. They lost 9 members that day, and I never leave. I feel like if I leave, if he's not with me, something's going to happen to me, you know? And I got to meet his wife, I got to meet his family, I got to meet his little daughter, and he's just part of me for the rest of my life.
This memorial obviously is a physical representation of the grief and the void that's left in the city. You can see yourself going down there and having that moment of contemplation in the next couple of days?
Absolutely, absolutely. I'll be going down there and I'll be looking at some of the names, some of my colleagues that I lost that day, and it's a very emotional day, very emotional.
It's part of the healing, and I know you've been very involved in meeting with other survivors and dealing with the emotions that come with being somebody who made it out of there when so many people didn't.
Well, they tell me, Chris, I contemplated a lot. I said to myself, I still do sometimes, why did God save me? You know what? And somebody told me, I said, God saved you for a reason. So whenever I talk to the family, I go on to, I represent not just myself, but I also try to represent the 343 brothers that we lost that day.
Well, we're really thankful that you shared your story with us today, Louis. Thank you very much, and continued good luck in your recovery over the next...
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me.
All right, thanks very much. Louis Caccioli, retired firefighter. Pleasure to meet him and get to know him a little bit, and his story not unlike many other firefighters as they struggle to get past it and heal from a terrible, terrible experience 10 years ago. But it is, I think, this year different in many ways, and we've heard it from firefighters and first responders, and just from the general public. We talked about it earlier, Sophie, that with the construction of this memorial and the fact that it's opening up to the public, that it's an important physical milestone, and it's an emotional milestone for people to be able to get past this event, always remembering their loved ones, but being able to move past it and get on with their lives.
All right. Chris, thank you, and an honor to have that firefighter on our show this morning. We'll talk to you again in a little bit.
Thanks, Sophie.
Chris Gailus in New York for us. Now to our other top story of the day. Family members of victims of the 9/11 attacks are in New York this morning, taking part in a ceremony to commemorate the 10th anniversary of the attack and for the unveiling of a monument that marks the place where the World Trade Center once stood. The latest on that, we are joined by our Chris Gailus, who has been in New York this week covering the anniversary. Chris?
That's right, Sophie, and the National 9/11 Memorial opened to the families of victims who died on 9/11 10 years ago. It's a stirring memorial, a beautiful looking memorial that takes up almost an entire city block here, 8 acres in all between the two waterfalls, and we'll learn a little bit more about that in a moment. But first, we've seen scenes of sadness and anguish and a lot of people at the side of the waterfall trying to come to terms with their loss even 10 years later as they continue to read the names of the victims out in pairs from the podium here in New York City. It's still surrounding the memorial, a construction site, although nobody is on the job right now. The whole area has been sealed off for most of the day with some of the high-powered dignitaries that have been here to take in the ceremony. But now that that plaza is open, people have a touchstone, an emotional and physical representation of their loss to be able to come down, to visit, to contemplate that loss, and to be able to just sit and think about those things at the memorial. So many people here brought pictures of their loved ones and are sharing those memories and thoughts together. You see a lot of people gathered around the outside of the waterfall there. And it is quite an amazing sight to see so many people trying to engage in this healing as they do every year. And that is what we see a lot too, people etching the name that's carved in bronze into a piece of paper to be able to take that away with them. And we've learned a lot about the memorial over the past couple of days. We had a chance to meet with the architect and the designer, who oddly enough came up with the design and was inspired by the design when he watched the second plane go into the South Tower 10 years ago, and immediately began sketching what he felt would be a physical representation of the void, finding a way to make a physical representation of the loss that he and so many other New Yorkers felt, and he feels like he's got that right now. Michael Arad is considered to be very talented, and when people take a look at the work that he has done and the vision that he has fought to preserve here on the World Trade Center site, a lot of people have been very impressed with him. And we talked to him about what he hopes people will get out of their visit to the 9/11 Memorial.
And starting a new chapter in the history of the site, everything that we've done is set the stage for this moment. We've brought so much care to every aspect, every built aspect of this memorial. But at the end of the day, it's not about these inanimate objects. It is about the people who are going to visit the site and let it change them, influence them, let them have that profound moment of contemplation at the edge of these voids, see the names, touch them, connect to them, and reflect on the past and how that past has carried us to this present moment and what we're going to do about it.
Michael Arad beat out 5,200 other entries in the competition to establish a design, and it's interesting because his was the only one that defied one of the conditions of that competition, and that was that the original developer wanted to sink the entire Memorial Plaza 30 feet below the sidewalk level, and Michael felt like that was the wrong idea. He felt that people needed to be able to access it right off the sidewalk. He fought to have the plaza kept at grade, with the exception of the fountains that are sunken below the surface. And as you can see, that has turned into a very, very powerful visual representation of the loss that people have experienced here. Sophie?
It's really beautiful, Chris, and as he said, it's a way to reflect on the past. But as you've mentioned this morning, you feel a sense that people there are ready to move on. They won't ever forget, obviously, but ready to move on now 10 years later.
That's absolutely right, and the construction continues of World Trade Center 1, the big tower, once known as the Freedom Tower, although they don't use that term to describe it anymore. They want to take some of that emotion out of it. It is now One World Trade Center. It's starting to take shape. It will be 1,776 feet tall when it is complete. There will be other shops and retail will return to this area, and the plaza becomes the centerpiece and becomes like a Pearl Harbor Memorial or maybe the National Mall in Washington, D.C., a place where people can go, not necessarily to think about horror and terror, but to recognize how lucky we all are to live here and be able to enjoy our freedoms. And that is really what it's all about for Michael Arad, the designer, and for a lot of people who are coming down here to look at it today.
What an emotional day, Chris. Thank you so much for joining us.